Hello YouTube, this is Kherny from Kherny.com. This is episode 3 of my Let's Play Kerbal space program. We're on to the second part of the space station mission, where we're going to get some refuelers up into space so we can launch further missions to the outer planets, and if need be use the fuel from the stations to refuel them. Now, it's taken a little bit longer than I thought it would to upload this video, because learning how to rendezvous with the station has taken a lot of time. Basically, this is what I've come up with. I've tried many variations, and this is without trying to. I didn't want to use anyone else's online, so I've basically just tried to come up with something myself. I've ended up going with an asparagus system. Now, if you don't know what asparagus is, it's just a way of fueling the rockets. I've basically got 6 large Rockomax fuel tanks around the central Rockomax fuel tank, and all I've done is they're attached in sets of 2, so there's 3 sets of 2. Now the first set will refuel the second set, the second set will refuel the third set, and the third set will refuel the central Rockomax fuel tank. Now, so that gives us 3 sets of 2 and a central one. Now, as we launch, they'll all fire. The first set will be feeding into the second one. The second one will be feeding into the third, and the third will be feeding into the central one. Now, the only set that should run out of fuel is the first set. So they'll initially run out of fuel and they'll be detached, the first set of 2. The second stage, the ones that were being fueled by them will then run out of fuel. They'll then be detached, so the weight will be decreasing, therefore we've got less to lift, and we've still got maximum amount of fuel in the fuel tanks that are left. And this carries on round until all the 6 of the outer fuel tanks are depleted, and the central one is still firing and it's got a full fuel tank. Now it will be a bit more clearer when I launch. You'll see what I mean, and I'll explain it a little bit better than when we're launching. This will get us into orbit, and it should get us to the station. Now, I've found I need a lot of RCS fuel to do the manoeuvring. As you'll see, it's a bit of a slow process, and it took me a lot of time to get to grips with the system involved, and I'll try and explain it as we go through it. One other thing that's different in my Let's Play now is I've put some mods on. Now, I wasn't initially going to do that. I was going to keep it with all the stock parts and everything like that, and I am to a degree. What I've done is I've just put some mods in that make life a little bit easier with the UI. Now, when you're designing your rockets, you have to initially pick a type of pod to pilot them, whether that's manned or unmanned. Now, once you've done that, you can't easily save any parts of the rockets. For example, if I detach my booster section at the bottom, where that decoupler is, and put that there, I've got no way of repeating that. If I make another rocket, I can't save that section for later. But with a mod called, I think it's called subfolder, I'll have it in the description anyway. It will actually save that particular selection of parts on their own. So if I then go to make a new one, I can pick any pod, doesn't really matter. Now, instead of having to go through the whole process of designing those asparagus rockets and the links and all that sort of stuff, I just go to the mod that installs this little button up here, subfolder, go to lifters, I think it is, I've left it under, there we go, and my asparagus big launcher. Now if I select that, it picks all the parts for me. Now, that's still keeping it pretty pure, with just helps with the saves me time when I'm designing. Right, let's go back to the other one I just had. my refueler. That's just loading up. Now, one of the other mods I have is called Haystack. When you're in orbit around the planet, it's sometimes going to be a little bit difficult to pick out um, the different objects that are in orbit for selection. Now, with this mod Haystack, you can call it up. It's a little menu, and you can select any of the orbital objects, or indeed anything that you control, and you can instantly switch to it to control it. So it's just again, it's a little UI helper. The third one I've got installed is Engineer. I've using it in a very limited way. I'm just using it so that when I take off, I can see a little bit of information about my apoapsis and my periapsis, and my time to reach them, just so I don't have to keep switching between the map screen and the flight screen. It just makes it a bit more visual. So that's the only way I'll be using that. You can use it in a more detailed way. It's actually there. Kerbal Engineer Redux, I think it's called. But I don't use it. There's quite a lot of detail to it, but I simply use it for that, just to show that information. There's one more I've installed, but I won't be using till possibly later. It's called it's a Kerbal fuel mod. Again, I'll link that in the description, and it's just expands what you can do a little bit later on to do with mining on planets and refueling. Now, I haven't looked at it in a great deal of detail, but it does sound like something that might be quite interesting to do once I've gone through my 9-stage plan, which you'll see in the description below. And the last one I've picked is called Quantum Strut. Now, I was in two minds about this one. You can see them there, that blue light. Now, it's like a futuristic kind of strut. You can see the normal struts there that I'm using. They are quite effective, but when you have joins like this, it looks quite messy there what I've done, it can be quite a weakness when things are docked. So someone's come up with a clever idea of creating these quantum struts, and they can reinforce, because once you're up in space, there's no way of attaching struts across. Say, for example, if we're in space and these two objects docked, these struts wouldn't be here. The only link would be the dock itself. Now that creates quite a weak point in terms of how solid they are. So someone's come up with these quantum struts, and you can simply activate them or deactivate them, and they create a quantum link. Now I've got a set of 4 there, and they're like virtual struts basically. So they just make it a little bit stronger on the join. So they're the only mods I've got installed. I've tried to keep it as little as possible. There's no other special parts or anything like that. That's the only part I'll be using, the strut. So basically, let's get back to the ship. This is my refueler. Now it's just a nose cone on the top there, with my pod underneath. Some RCS fuel tank. I wish I'd put 2 on here, but I'm not going to take it all to bits to put another one on. Instead, I've put some smaller Stratus V roundified monopropellant tanks. In fact, I put quite a lot on there because I've found in my attempts so far that I've run out of monopropellant as I'm approaching the station, which was partly due to a major navigational mistake I kept making. But we'll see how it goes. I've got some RCS thrusters on there. I've cut them down because I did have quite a few on here because of the size of it, but I've decided to reduce them. I did try out the other RCS thrusters that you can get, which are there, the place anywhere linear ones. Now, unlike these ones, they're one direction only, so if I was moving to the right, they'd fire to the left, whereas these ones, they'd all be firing in a direction. These would all be firing to the left to push you right. So I think overall, I prefer these ones. They seem to be more effective. I've just put some lights on there, some solar panels to power the lights, and they seem to be quite okay. Actually, more than enough really for what I'm doing. That looks like a new device. That's part of the engineer mod that lets me just see those little bits of detail I explained earlier down there when we're in taking off. I've got some battery packs on there. I've got some nuclear engines with some smaller fuel tanks. They'll be providing my final manoeuvring and getting me towards the station. That this is the part I'm looking to dock with the station. This fuel tank here. I was hoping to get 2, maybe 3 up there. I'll see how it goes. We come on down to the docking pod. Some people dock at this end, but I'll be going in from this way. Then we've got a smaller engine underneath here, a poodle engine with a 2-part tank. No, it's not that one. Which one is it? That's the one. A smaller a half Rockomax tank feeding it. Now that'll also be feeding the nuclear engines. I've used fuel lines for that up there, the FTX2 external fuel ducts. So basically that smaller Rockomax fuel tank will be feeding the poodle engine, which is underneath that empty fuselage there, and it'll also be feeding these nuclear engines. Then once that's run out, I'll eject it all and we'll be left with these nuclear engines with what they've got in the tank. Some struts to hold to make it a little bit more stable. Then I've got these a larger decoupler with some separatrons, which I haven't used before, but I think they should be quite effective at pushing away, because I did have some issues with fuel tanks colliding, so I think they'll solve that problem. We'll see when we take off. Now basically they're then attached to the Asparagus Rockomax fuel tanks, as I explained. You can see there, one set feeding another. Sorry, if that's the first set that gets ejected, they're feeding the next set, which feeds the next set, which then you can see behind feeds the main tank, and they do that in sets of 2. You'll see when we take off. Now I've basically got I've got the main sail Rockomax engine in the center, and I've got tri-engines there. I can't remember now. I think I've got the non-maneuverable ones. They got the LTV 30s and the LTV 45s. The difference I could see is the LTV 45 is slightly less power, but it's got some maneuverability. So I think I've gone with the LVT 30s there. So that's, and then I've basically got some struts again to hold them in place. Some canards, which are invaluable when manoeuvring initially, that I found anyway, to get into space. And we've got some structural devices to hold it all steady, some launch stability enhancers, and that basically is the design of my refueler. Now we're looking at getting 3 of these into space onto the station. I'll show you one, probably end up being the only successful one, but we'll see. I'll probably try to get 2 on, and then I'll show you the third, which could be the trickiest, because there'll be less space to try and manoeuvre, but by then hopefully I'd have perfected the technique, and I'll try to explain how I'm doing it. As I've noticed, I haven't found a very clear manoeuvring tutorial on the internet, so I'll try to explain how I'm doing it as best I can, and show you any pitfalls or mistakes that I've made to try and make it easier for you. Anyway, I'll see you in a minute on the launch pad. Just before we go to the launch pad, I just thought I'd let you show some further modifications I've made to the ship before we send it to the launch pad. Since the last video, it's been a bit of a disaster with the space station. I accidentally made a mistake when viewing the space station and pressed end flight instead of space center. I was a bit tired and it was late in the night, and it deleted the space station. So I've had to recreate the space station and send it back up into space before I could do this mission. Now in the process of doing that, I've had to learn how to dock with it using the refuelers, and while doing that I've made a little further modifications to it. As you can see, I've added solid fuel booster rockets. I was having a lot of trouble getting into orbit, but this setup seems to work fine. Now I'm using the Rockomax back solid fuel boosters,
under propulsion, and they're just directly attached to the big main fuel pods, and they'll drop off. They'll be the first part that will drop off because they'll burn through quite quickly, but they'll give me some speed at the beginning. This actually, I could probably do away with some of the fuel for the later stage. Probably turn this into a half one, but I'll leave it as it is. I think hopefully I've got the docking situation pretty well in hand now, and I can finally show you what I think is a good method for doing it. I've seen a lot of videos online about people docking it, and I haven't seen and sometimes they're pretty good, sometimes they're not, but they don't clearly explain that I've seen how to dock properly. Specifically, some of the little markers on your nav ball, which had me thrown for quite a while until I figured it out. So that's how the refueler is now looking. Pretty much the same as a few minutes ago when you saw the design. The only difference is the solid rocket fuel boosters. Now let's just have a look at our space station as it is at the moment. Now I've already sent 2 flights up, so you'll be witnessing the third. Just let it load in. Right, there we are. Now, as you can see, here's the space station I've had to put into orbit. I've had to recreate. I don't think I made any changes on that. I think I kept that exactly the same. I might have actually added a slightly bigger fuel tank at one end, which I didn't actually need in the end, but I've put it on there anyway. Now, the main difference you can see is I've now got 2 fuel pods attached. Large Rocket Max tanks, both full. Now the reason for doing this is if you hold down Alt and right click, you can then, using the out and in buttons, transfer fuel between any of the existing fuel pods or the fuel pods on the station itself. So what my thinking was that I'd dock some of the, I don't know how many, 3 say, another one there, you'll be seeing that in a minute, the third one onto there, and then I'll have 3 permanent fuel pods. That's why I've removed the booster rockets that were on the side. That was a bit tricky. Just before they docked, I ejected them off, but you'll see me try that again when we get this one up into space in a minute. So then I'll have 3 permanent fuel rockets docked here. You can see those quantum struts now actually engaged there, and I actually have them as well, although I don't know. You can see one there. They're actually on the docking connections there, and they actually come on as well to provide a more stable connection. So once I've got 3 there, I'll leave them permanently. That'll enable me a spare one. I'm not sure. I'm having a few thoughts about what I'm going to put there, and then I'll have a spare one for any fuel refuelers that come up dock and then return back down to the planet, either to burn up in the atmosphere or whatever I choose to do with them. Then additionally, I've still got at this end, let's get rid of that, I've still got another little pod there that can be docked if I need to. I transferred all the Kerbals, as you saw before, into my living section. There's 3 of them in there at the moment. Quite happily living there. Now let's get back to the launch pad and get this next one into space. Now, whatever you do, don't end flight. Go to the Space Center if you want whatever you've got in space to stay there. Now, let's get to the launch pad. Refueler B, I think it is. here we go. Stick the lights on. Wish I'd used them a little bit more. Those they're really powerful. Those rounded lights. You can just see them there instead of these square ones. There's the square ones. They don't have anywhere near the light of that. It's quite easy to have more than enough electric charge for it as well. Right, let's turn on the SAS. Full thrust, and let's get going. You'll get to see the asparagus staging as well. Basically, when we take off, all of these will fire. First of all, the booster rockets will drop off when they run out. Very shortly after that, the first of the first set of asparagus rockets, which are those, should be those two there, will run out of fuel and they'll drop off. Then it will be the second set, which will be that way. They'll drop off, and then finally I'll have the front and the back rockets drop off, leaving me just the centre one. Then when that drops off, I'll have the little pod rocket underneath there fire off with my 3 nuclear engines. They won't be using their own fuel, as they'll be fed. Actually, they'll be fed by that centre rocket as a backup. But I refuel that when I'm up. I pretty much don't use that. They don't run out, because I did have a few issues with fuel running out. But so I thought the simplest way was just to link it to that, in case they needed to use a little bit. But I found that now I've perfected the technique of rendezvousing. They don't use it, so that's fine. Right, let's get on with the launch. As you can see there's the mod I talked about, the engineer mod. Basically it just shows the apoapsis and periapsis and the time to reach them. I don't even need that really. All I'm interested in is seeing the height without having to keep switching between the map screen and this screen. It's been quite a struggle perfecting this rendezvous technique, but it's quite a satisfaction when it goes off. Right, here we go. We're coming up to the first stage. Booster rocket's about to run out. There we go. Now the asparagus rockets have ended. First stage drops off. I've seen on other videos as well, a lot of rockets start turning slowly, and I found that these canards stop that. I didn't like the look of them at first, but I found them quite useful. Just trying to turn there actually, I think. Of course, as you go up in the atmosphere, you ain't going to have any air, but at that point it's all ejected anyway. We're almost coming up to the second stage. About 12,000 meters, I think it is, that they'll run out. There we go. Now we've got the final set of rockets that are fully fueled, because they've been fueled from the previous set. Right, 15,000, let's start slow turning. Right, let's hold it there for the minute. We into second part of the atmosphere where it thins a bit. Alright, 25, let's go a bit further. Even now, I don't know how many flights I've made, but I still have to be a bit careful when trying to get in orbit. Basically, I try to keep that number positive, the time to apoapsis. The periapsis height is the one we're trying to... Right, there goes the final stage of the asparagus rockets, and we're left now with the central one. Now, there's our apoapsis height. That'd be the highest point of the orbit. It's currently at about 60,000, and we're at 45,000 meters. So we're going to stick on RCS for a moment, level it out. Right, now we want to slowly, just slowly, I found, start going towards a level orbit. That will slow down our height, and at the same time increase the lowest point of our orbit. Now, as you can see there, we're going up in the hundreds of meters now, while we're going up in the thousands of meters on the periapsis. So, but we're still... Right, we're almost at the equator there. Now, our height... Right, last stage. There go the Separatrons, pushing it away nicely. Fire off the... Oh dear, that's a bit powerful. Let's get back online. Let's let it resettle us. Right, there we go. Now, let's line it up again. Now, you can see how quickly the periapsis is coming down now, in thousands. We're still gaining some height, and we're slowly going towards our periapsis now. Sorry, yeah, the apoapsis, towards the highest point. If we ever look on the map, you can see there. There we are. There's our apoapsis. It's currently at 92,000, and we're expanding the orbit round. We've got 40 seconds to get to about 80,000 meters on the periapsis. Now, if I come behind that yellow circle, it seems to slow down the time to apoapsis. So, and that's what we want. Gives us a little bit more time. Yeah, that'll be fine. We're around 94,000 meters, the highest point. We're still at minus 200,000 meters on the periapsis. At this point, all you're trying to do for the rendezvous is just get an orbit. Once you've done that, it's aligning with the station, which is a series of maneuvers which I'll explain. Right. My station's currently at about 150,000 meters, so if I can, I'd like one of them to be around 150, the other one between 120 and 150, because at different heights you can speed it up in different ways. Right, here we go, 80. Keep going for a minute. 40. Right, stop it there. Now, my apoapsis now is about the same height as the station. Let's just check that. There's our station round there. We'll make that the target. This is where that haystack mod comes in handy. If I just click Kerbal station, target, can do the same thing by clicking on it, but it seems to miss target and pick other ones. So I just use the haystack mod, which I'll link in the description for this video. Now, there we are on the blue line going around the planet. Now, if you have a look from above, the yellow line is the space station, the course it's taken. Now, one half, my apoapsis, as I said, is now at 150, which is the same height, so you can't actually see it. It's actually mimicking the orbit of the station on that side. Now, on this side, my periapsis is 88,000 meters, which is a lot lower than the 150 that the station's on. Now that means that I'll be orbiting quicker on this side, so I'll be catching it. Now I should have ideally looked when I was taking off. I could have basically, if I was taking off from there, if you look at the map screen when you're taking off, say you're there, you wait until the station is about where it is now. Actually, I found about coming round there, and you'll find that as you take off, by the time you've taken off and got to here, the station has orbited and it's basically upon you. So if you can do what I've just done there and get to the same height and get an orbit, you'll be reasonably near, but easy to maneuver, which helps with this next stage now, because we want to, first of all, we want to get close to that station. Now, the way you do that is basically you're going to use intersection points. Now, if your orbit, or which is the blue line, is intersecting or close enough to the orbit of the object you're trying to meet, which you can use for, I've seen that you can use for other areas as well if you're at other planets or trying to get to other vehicles in space, you'll basically get intersection points like this. Now, as ours is running parallel, it's given us one. Now, if you look at them, there's one that's pointing up like a pyramid and one that's pointing down. Now, the one that's pointing down is the point that you'll be at. Now, that's when we're at that point, the space station will reach this point. Now, this is on the nearest intersection point. You normally get two. The orange one is the I can't remember whether it's the first or the second orbit now. Basically, if you look at them, one of them will be on this orbit where your intersect will be. Say like now, the next orbit will be here. I'll be there. He'll be there. And the separation will be the second line down, 1.2957 1,259,000 kilometers, and I'll reach that in 6 minutes. That'll be the nearest point on this orbit. Now, if I just speed up time and allow it to go round and round the planet, as I'm at a lower orbit on one half, I will go faster than him, so I'll gradually come round behind him. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll pause the video in a minute until I'm nearer. I'll just give you an example of it though. Let's just turn off the RCS first, so we don't waste it while we speed up time. If it's going to use it now, if I speed up time now, on this pass you can see the separation is 1295.7 million kilometers. Right. Now, the reason I wanted to get over 120,000 on the periapsis was because I can speed up time to 100 if we're over 120. Now, as I come round, you can see there it's gone to 1414 because the distance is getting greater. Because I'm not over the halfway point yet, it will keep getting it will get greater again until I catch up a bit further. 1480, see the separation's increasing. Now I'm going to pause the video there until I catch him up, and then I'll carry on with the explanation. Right, we're back. Now, we've been chasing this thing around the planet, and this is the closest orbit we're going to get, I think, 51 kilometers. It increases after that, so that's going to be our closest point there. When we reach that, we're going to equal out our speed with the target, so you switch it to the target on the nav ball, and we're going to try and get that to 0. That's the only thing we're concentrating on at the moment. Then once we've got it to 0, we're then going to aim towards our target and try and get the orbits nearer that way as well. And we just repeat that process until we get them virtually the same. So let's speed that up a little. Oh, let's just oh no, that's good. That's good. Right. Let's speed it up a little bit. So keeping it on the target, we're then going to go to our retrograde. And start losing some of that speed. Right, we've slowed it some. Now we'll aim towards our target. Your orbit will go all over the shop while you're doing this. Just be sure that you're not going to hit the planet. Right, now we'll push towards our target. Now what we're looking for now is a close intersect point. We're bringing our heading, which is the yellow one, prograde, towards the pink target. Right, that'll do. 12 kilometers away there. Equal out, slow down the speed again using retrograde. Right, 3 meters per second difference there. Now we'll aim towards our target.
making sure we got the right marker. Now watch our markers. Right, 11 and 11.